Recording and unmute.
You good? All right, we'll call this council work session to order. We're at Oak Ridge City Hall. It's Thursday, May 30th, 2024. It's 6:01 p.m. First order of business, pledge allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You. Jackie, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Counselor Coker. Here. Counselor Bjarnson. Here. Counselor Tarman.
Here.
Counselor Brewer. Here. Mayor Cutchin.
Here.
Counselor Kenyon. Here. Counselor Hollett. Here.
All right, all present. Additions, corrections, or adjustments to the agenda. Any counselors have recommended changes to the agenda? You got someone in the waiting room, James.
Jackie's got that now.
Okay, oh, thanks. James, any adjustments to the agenda? Okay, none here. Then we'll go to public comment and we'll start online. Is there any public comment online? I'm seeing any public comment in the room. All quiet. All right, item 6, that's business from the city council work session. 6.1 is discussion of city's hiring and promotion policies. James?
Okay, so why are we here? I don't like to hide the ball, so it's going to tell you why we are here. Recently, there has been some concern expressed about the way some of our employees have been hired, particularly Fire Chief Scott Hollett, but would also apply to Public Works Supervisor Robert Chrisman and Police Chief Martin. They were also hired in the same way. I'll get into that later. So I'll start with story. So I took this job as city administrator on July 5th, 2022. When I took the job, my understanding was that Chief Hollett and Robert Chrisman had both already been appointed into their supervisory roles as fire chief and as public works supervisor. It's my understanding. But apparently, they were not appointed to those full positions. They were appointed to what's called AIC positions, which should most of you don't know what that means, unless you've worked in military, police, or fire. AIC means active in charge. There was an email sent out by Kevin Martin on June 23rd, 2022, approximately 2 weeks prior to me starting at the CA. This email was from Kevin Martin, who was pro tem city administrator of Michigan Police Chief. So we sent this email out on June 23rd. Everyone in the fire department did not send it to me. It was not the fire department, police department. So I was unaware of this email. We'll read it to you. From Kevin Martin, Oak Ridge Fire Department staff, part-timers and volunteers. Captain Hollett will officially be promoted to the Oak Ridge Fire Department Fire Chief sometime after July 1st, when he negotiates his contract and his final approval of the new city administrator. Between today and June 30th at midnight, Captain Hollitt will be the lead fire person for you. He will be in charge of all operational aspects of the department. I will still be there for HR personnel related issues until that time. July 1st, Captain Hollitt will be acting fire chief. With AIC fire chief. With all powers and duties of the fire chief. Captain Hollitt will then have his official promotion to fire chief when there is a final quote sign off unquote from the new full-time city administrator. Please help me congratulate Scott for moving into this role, great step forward in the future and having a fire department ambulance service with a chief of your own. Okay, questions, contact. Okay. So, again, I didn't get this email. I thought it would change. So when I took on this role, I did a couple of things. One, I negotiated Chief Hollitt's pay increase. And that was signed by me on September 7th, 2022, so about 2 months after I took the position. So retroactive to July 1st, 2022, coincided with the fiscal year. The money had been budgeted for the personnel set. So I signed that, Scott Hollitt signed that, and Colin Shirley Finance Director signed it. Did that. The next month, on October 20th, 2022, we had a city council meeting where we swore in Scott Hollitt as fire chief. And he signed his oath of office, which I included here. I put the unsigned version of that is in the packet. It would be addressed as the signed form is in your HR file. So there's that. Also want to mention, just point out, Chief Hollitt on July 6th, so the day after I took office as city administrator, he sent an email to our city attorney, Matt Dahlstrom. He says, "Hi Matt, I recently been promoted fire chief. We're looking to fill my old position with the EMS operations officer." And then he asks some legal questions about that, which I redacted because privileged. But like, it's not that big a deal. It's just he's explaining the process, what we need to do to hire Scott's previous position. I included this email just to show you that no time did our city attorney say, whoa, wait a second, this you didn't do this right. How can you be fire chief? Just like no one from city council, October 20th, 2022 said, oh, wait, I'm not sure we did this right. Just like back on September 7th, when he signed his contract for his wage increase. Yeah, no one said, whoa, we did do this right. And again, this happened also for Christmas. And if we go back to 2018, it happened with Chief Martin. Now I could have just lied and said, oh yeah, I knew this. I knew this from the beginning. That he was AIC and I just waved my magic wand to see him and made him fire chief. But that's not the truth. I thought he'd already been made fire chief. That was my understanding. It's never corrected, and like I said, nobody knows what AIC means, so I think everyone knows, just kind of thought. Yeah, it's already the fire chief. And just like Kevin Martin said, I'll read it again. Captain Hollitt will then have his official promotion to fire chief when there is a final sign off of the new full-time city administrator. So That's what I did. So there are some errors, and we didn't strictly follow the hiring practice policy in the employee handbook, the operations manual, which is the public employee handbook. But I think that spirit of the law, we follow those are sorts of laws. So it could be considered fixed the day I signed the September 7th personnel action, making him fire chief, as it says, as a fire chief promotion. That could be considered fixed right in written. If that's not good enough, we could say it was during the public city council meeting on October 20th, 2022. Where he was sworn in, took an oath, brought the public city council, signed the document. That could be considered when it's officially done. If that's still not good enough, there's nothing in our current policies, employee handbook, the operations manual, that says I can't do it retroactively. So I could write a letter and now say, I retroactively make Scott Pollock fire chief effective July 1st, 2022. Spoke to our city attorney about that, and he said, yeah, technically, I guess you're right, but it certainly wouldn't be my first choice. And it would be first choice either. So that's where these issues have come up. Personally, I think it's a mountain out of a molehill. Because Scott Pollock's been here for 34 years. Been in leadership roles for many years. He's the fire chief. And again, if I had known that he was just AIC chief, not full chief, when I took on this role as city administrator, I would have made him full chief. So that's the controversy. Again, I think it's kind of been blown out of proportion to some degree, but we should follow policy, and that's why we're here today, is to look at our policies and see where we might want to fix things so that there's no gray areas anymore. Smooth and above board, nobody has any. I will say that I've looked at some of the past policies. And in the past couple of manuals, personnel manuals, it is always encouraged promotions from within rather than going outside. Sometimes it's necessary, you have to go outside, but when you have someone who's been working there for, I guess, 31 years at the time, not 34, it's pretty good. In Kevin Martin's case, when he was promoted again, same way, that was pretty clear as well, because the police department, a lot of people had left. I think there were 2 people there. A newer officer who had been working there a couple of years, and then Kevin Martin. A chief before Washington State, an active chief, so really, who else you can pick? Same thing with Robert Chrisman. He'd been supervising the public works staff for years, but we called him boss. Yeah, I don't. So that's my personal opinion in these matters. But I will also point out an additional way this could be fixed if necessary. Again, it would be retroactive. But we just ran into a situation. I included the letter. It's a memo I wrote on May 21st, just 24 last week. We had Lieutenant Jim Cole with the fire department. Unexpectedly quit. With just 2 week notice. It's going back to a more of a desk job in Eugene, closer to his family. Totally understand that. Fortunate. But with him quitting, we only have 4 full-time firefighters, including Chief Hollow. As you know, we did not had Lieutenant Locke for 8 months. He's no longer with us. And now with Jim Cole, now we're down to 2 full-time people. So it's an unusual circumstance. We need to hire someone immediately. So I called the city attorney. And he said, yes, you can do that under unusual circumstances. Ironically, as you'll see, I put some notes here. This is the language that our city attorney gave us right in the middle, section 5.02 of the employee handbook personnel, and who provides that the selection provision shall establish consistent guidelines for selecting candidates for vacant positions in city service. These guidelines shall be followed for all selection efforts unless specifically waived by the city administrator due to unusual circumstances. That's the language he gave me. That's from the 2018 manual, personnel manual. It's ironic because I sent him the new one, the June 21, but we all make errors, we're all human. Our city attorney made an error and took the language from the employee handbook 2018, which doesn't apply anymore. And I didn't catch that when I wrote this memo. However, very, very similar language is on page 10 of the 2021 operations manual, which reads, these guidelines regarding selection of employees shall be followed for all selection efforts unless specifically waived by the administrator due to unusual circumstances. So it's roughly the same language. You just have the wrong citing. So I think there's been an argument to be made that also unusual circumstances back in 2002, city administrator, because we hadn't had an actual fire chief for 3 years, roughly. As folks may recall, I think it was 2019 when we lost the last chief. Brian became CA in July 2019. Shortly after appointed himself fire chief, and then served as fire chief until he resigned as CA effective February 2022. And we had Kevin Cronin came in, and Kevin Cronin was reluctant to take over the fire chief role. Again, from my understanding, put that on to Scott primarily, also Eric to some degree, that accurate. Had been doing the fire chief roles since he didn't want to do it, which I understand. So the usual circumstances, my goodness, we have a fire department without a real chief for 3 years. No offense, it's Brian, but you know, he's not.
I was administrative chief. I was perfectly open with that. And I relied upon Eric and Scott to do the technical part of it.
So we need to, like I said, so that's where we're at with this. Again, there have been some public records requests recently focused only on Scott Hollett, not on Robert Brisson or Ed Martin. So I don't know personally. Sure, that's just a coincidence, but yeah, but there are things we should fix in our policies. Doesn't happen again. I apologize for any oversight on my actions. But again, I my personal opinion is that it was fixed the moment I signed the personnel action form on September 7th, which was retroactive to July 1st. Because that's showing the money, well, that's the money, that's what we made him fire chief. Covering the personnel action form. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that issue. I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, council, any councilors have questions of James or discussion they want to get into? Counselor Kenyon.
I would like to know what part of the employee handbook could be changed and what that change would look like if we decided to do one, because I was under the impression we were coming here today to talk about promotions and policies.
Well, that is in the employee handbook.
Right, so what are you making the suggestion that we make any changes? Or are you just leaving that open to the council to decide?
In a perfect world, I would have come to you with some suggestions. I just have been swamped and overwhelmed with the budget process. Losing employees.
So essentially, this is just a public way to express what's been going on behind the scenes for the last several days or weeks. My question is, how did this concern get expressed to you?
Concern was expressed.
Counselor Tarman and I approached the CA directly with our concerns, just so he was aware of them. See if he had answers that maybe we just didn't understand. That's how,
Did you get those answers when you brought that to him?
he was still doing some research with the city attorney and and it was more to it than just this particular issue with Captain Chief Holland, but there's a few other things too.
Yeah, concerns about overtime, et cetera. Counselor Charm's personal records or budget, perfectly legal, well within rights to ask for that information. And you saw, well, there's a lot of overtime. Chief Holland has earned this year as well as other fire employees. Generally, that is explained by not having one of the 4 full-time guys. And those shifts still have to be filled. Unlike the police department, we have 1 cop on in an ambulance, we need at least 2 people, preferably 3. You have to have 1 person driving and preferably 2 people attending to the patient.
Yeah, why don't we'll to sort of structure the conversation, why don't we stick with the first part, which is which you brought up, is promotion and hiring. Does any counselors have questions on that particular part of it?
I did have one question about, it shows longevity each year, and I remember when we looked at the employee handbook that that's only supposed to happen on set periods.
Oh, on a personnel action form.
Well, no, it just shows each year, this is, yeah, where it shows longevity 3%, longevity 3%, longevity 3% for each year, but wasn't it?
It's not
When when we met, we're looking at the employee handbook, it showed it every 4 years or maybe 4. When we get a longevity increase.
I will check with Eric Kaitola on this. I thought he had checked these. But that is a separate issue, but he has discovered that roughly half of our employees were given 2 COLA bumps last year, 3%, an additional 3%. We're going to correct that by simply not giving this year's COLA bump. They already got it. But Scott, his name was not on the list that Eric gave me as being an error. That maybe didn't look back this far, so I can certainly check that.
I just saw it on the new contract too, another longevity.
Thank you. I will.
I get it, explain that. So the way longevity works
is the city has a pay scale that's established. That longevity pay is not included in that pay scale. So if you move up a range on the pay scale or a step on the pay scale, then that your longevity still counts. So you get that step on the scale multiplied by the 3%. It doesn't accumulate more and more. It's still the same 3%. Because like I said, it's not included on the city's pay scale.
The COLAs are included on the pay scale, or the pay scale as approved by the unions. That will be the, or whatever was negotiated with the union. The longevity is separate. But I would still have it.
Huh?
I would still have Eric Tartola.
Yeah, like, that doesn't. Maybe I'll go back and reread it, but
Yeah, so I did have a couple questions. So the employee handbook is adopted by the city council, in this case, 2021, and provides a framework of personnel policies for the staff and the CA to operate within. Sets some boundaries, obviously, with certain things you don't want to do in policy. So I got it, because that gives you kind of some freedom to operate within those boundaries. But in this case, I don't see any need to modify our current handbook. It was written by CIS essentially. I worked very closely with the woman there, and it's completely in accordance with statute. But what I do see a need to do is follow the handbook, because I think we're not following the handbook. And but the question that comes up with regard to Chief Martin's email, or at that time pro tem DA, it sounds like he said that Captain Hollett had been chosen to be Chief Hollett, but had not been appointed yet. Is that what he relayed to you when you asked him?
I don't think I ever directly asked him, because I just everyone was claiming that Robert Chrisman, Scott Holland had already been promoted to their supervisory positions. And I just needed to negotiate the amount of money and sign off.
So, and maybe I'll ask the counselors that were here at the time. A pro tem CA cannot promote or hire or fire people without the city council approval. So does anyone in council remember approving Chief Hollett's promotion?
I remember a discussion that when Chief Martin became, we can look up the videos, because when Chief Martin had to become pro tem in an urgent emergency fashion, pro tem CA, in addition to being the police chief, he said to the council, you know what, I can't do fire in addition to my regular job and the CA job on pro tem basis. So my recommendation is to appoint Chief Hollett as the,
Acting in capacity.
I don't remember what the language that he used was, but he said to have him be the chief of the department. And I don't even remember though if anything came up regarding public works. It may have, but there'll be a video.
Well, my concern is we have a pro tem CA who doesn't really acknowledge promoting or hiring the fire chief, and we have a current CA who also doesn't acknowledge it. So it's kind of one of these things, and it all of a sudden he's a de facto fire chief because no one's owned up to it. So we are where we are. You know, he's a very competent fire chief, but I just am concerned in following policy, and it was absolutely ignored here in all cases. Even if it was an internal hire, all qualified people should be eligible to apply. And they weren't. It wasn't internally advertised. It wasn't externally advertised, even word of mouth. So it's a concern with me that we're not following our own policy that we adopted as a city council. And the other question I would have about the situation is, why did Mr. Chrisman get a contract in November of 2022 and Chief Hollett not get a contract? It was just a verbal negotiation to fill out the path. Is that what it was?
That is a legitimate question. It's simply because Robert brought one to me almost immediately. Whereas Scott did not. He was busy with stuff, and my understanding was that it wasn't necessary. You could still operate out an employment contract. Our current finance director,
She had a hire letter. I gave
she had a
her.
hire letter, but not a contract.
You don't need a contract, but you need a hire letter. And then if you have a hire letter, the employee handbook applies to everything else that's not in the hire. But the chief didn't have either one of those, is my concern. And the pay, and this is within your purview, but I don't think it was looking out for the best interest of the city in the step that you gave both of those folks. Step 14 in a brand new job they had never, ever done before. And they got step 14 off the pay chart.
Yeah, well, I can answer that too. That was my call. If you look at what chiefs are making right now, I challenge you to find one that's making under $100,000.
Which is why I wrestled with the ability to even hire a fire chief. I didn't think the city was able to afford that. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm sorry.
So this all happened I was at the meeting where Scott got sworn in. And all this has happened like almost 2 years ago. Why is this coming up now? I mean, I understand that the overtime thing came up, which in my opinion, what other choice did we have? But why now? Why is this coming up right now? Because I saw on his contract that it stated July 1st. So that's why I'm wondering, why is this all almost 2 years later?
Right.
When you were there, when he got sworn in and I was there?
I wasn't there. I was a citizen.
Oh, you were a citizen? I apologize. Okay, so I'm just saying, like, there was a ton of us there. We all witnessed it. None of the council said anything. No one's brought up anything since until the last couple of weeks. So that's my question. Why? Why now?
Because with the public records request, all this data came in, and as I sifted through it, I saw things that looked atypical and out of the ordinary, and perhaps in violation of our employee handbook. And I think we need to learn from mistakes that we make in the past, instead of brushing under the rug like nothing ever happened.
And my question is, and forgive me, I don't mean any disrespect, as a mayor, I would think that maybe just more information would be brought in for all the people that were overseeing and the inner workings. And also council, if any of us were concerned about Chief Hollett's income or anything like that. But I understand the public records request came in. But again, why? What brought this to the point where we were like, oh, something is not right here, especially considering that other employees have gone through the same way. But for me, James did exactly what it says in the handbooks that he's able to do as acting, whether or not you and I feel as not fire chiefs what Scott is entitled to earn. I think that our city does need a fire chief, especially one that's willing to give forth the amount of hours and effort that he does, because our small town is not, especially with all the drama, people don't want to come here necessarily to work for pennies on the dollar with a bunch of stress. So the fact that Scott, after this many years, has come on, agreed to be chief, got this pay scale after like 35 years. I don't know anybody who's been in their position for that long, not very often. So for me, all these numbers, all these lines added up to be exactly where we are today correctly. I mean, I'm reading these little notes, and even though it's not like there wasn't an advertisement and this and that, the way that things happened, to me, in my opinion, it was, our city administrator had every reason and every right and every power to do what he did with Chief Scarlett and excuse me, I'm putting your names together. Scott, Chief Hollett, God, my brain. I think that you are amazing, and the fact that you give so much is great. And I'm sorry you have to go through this, but if we have to fix policies so that we do things differently, then so be it.
There's nothing wrong with the policy. You just have to follow the policy.
I feel like there were policies that were followed through here, considering the situation.
Councilor Kenyon.
Mayor, was it you that made the public records request for the
No, I didn't.
information that you?
No.
Was it you, Counselor?
It was me. I made a public records request because I'd heard issues about somebody receiving overtime that they weren't entitled to. It wasn't Chief Pollitt. And then I'd also heard some other issues, so I made a public records request. We got a bunch of data and info. And the other thing is, people were complaining about, I saw the article about complaining about overtime for the fire chief. So I asked to see the current contract or the employment agreement that he worked under. So whenever people brought it up, say, he's allowed to get it. But what happened was, wasn't a contract. There was no paper, nothing saying it was fire chief. And then I got a future contract that showed that he would, in the future, have a contract. And so I was like, well, this isn't current working conditions of what he's paid for. So what is it? How is he being paid? How are we allowed to pay him? So that's kind of how this happened. And so we didn't follow the process. And so now it just got a little bit sticky and dirty. So we just need to make sure that we don't do this again.
So I would think that
Because I didn't get,
maybe what we should do is hire somebody to be on duty all day, every day until a CA quits. So that from the moment we have an interim come in, that person can oversee them and say, wait, you gotta do it this way, wait, you gotta do it that way, wait, you gotta do it that way. And then when we finally hire for 6 months later, an actual CA, they can train them from day one. This is what you gotta do, this is what you gotta do. Because the way that it's been working for the last umpteen years that I'm aware of is that when we do end up getting a new CA, thank God, we've gone for months, if not longer, without one. And they're thrown in, just like, here's a job, get her done. And they got to figure it out step by step. I'm amazed that by October or November, you managed to fill out some paperwork that declared that he was a chief. Thank you. And give him the appropriate wage. Thank you for doing your job, James.
I never blamed James for any of this.
What is the problem then? Like how can we possibly make sure that in a freaking crisis situation, every policy is being followed all the time?
So the point was, as I was asking for info, and then I wasn't even aware that it came back to me that he had no contract. That was how it came back to me. I wasn't really concerned about that. I just wanted to be able to say to people, yes, he can get overtime.
Yeah, but
Drop
you did just mention that you want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So
Well,
how
so,
we can make sure that it never happens
Please.
again is just to hire someone.
so what I did is once I had all this info, found it out, I said, went back to James with Brian, we had a meeting, discussed it. And I said, there's issues like, they need to be fixed. I'm not sure exactly how that gets taken care of. And then there was this meeting. So I never heard anything again, but now here we are. So this is what happened. I didn't call for a meeting. I said,
You did call for this meeting.
Names there.
I thought he was asked.
I think we wanted to have an executive session about it, but then city attorney said we can't, because the executive session can only be for future hiring. Under that, to discuss the potential hiring. So we couldn't do an executive session, so work session is the best option. It will-
My concerns were mostly about other things. Not this. This just is a byproduct of my concerns.
So then where's all the rest of your concerns? Why are we here only focused on Mr. Chief?
That was the first thing that James spoke of, so that's why we're discussing this now. And now we can move on to the next part. So in this case, one of the issues that came out with the public records request was vacation time. So the employee handbook caps, as does all the collective bargaining agreements, caps vacation carryovers from year to year to a certain amount. And it also caps what an employee can sell back without a CA approval. And so as we looked at the records and vacation accrual, there were some astronomical accruals that could not have happened, because if you can only carry 40, the case in point in the employee handbook, the most you could ever possibly get would be 80. If you cashed it in right, or if you looked at the employee's pay record right before the fiscal year ended on the second year. But there were some that were well out there in excess of 500. So, and the buyouts, the buybacks were given, again, for every staff employee, the CA can waive above that cap that's in there. For the CA to sell back, he has to come to the mayor and get approval to sell back that lead. So if you look at the amount of money that went out the door with these vacation buyouts were inappropriately accrued, it's a thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Why isn't that information in front of us?
I didn't put the packet together. That's your city administrator.
Right, well, this work session is supposed to.
Is that, did you want to contain it? I didn't know that. You never gave me the boundaries that I asked for.
Well, there are some employment contracts that were signed off on by Louis Gomez. They're very generous contracts. Chief Martin, Michael McPherson, both have them. Where it's not capped. And so of course, everyone else wants the same thing, and I've got to try to be fair. I did cap yours. Or it's the same, or the vacation, I think. You know, I put a cap on yours because the sweetheart contracts, I'll call them, that Louis Gomez signed off on, get an extra day for every year you work. Something like that. I don't have the comments, but there's no limit. So my work here since 25 years, it's an extra day of vacation for every year she works, something like that. Anyway, yes, it's very generous, but that's what I'm stuck with. That contract signed, it's done. That's what I can do.
It doesn't mean you have to match every,
Oh, it's not
a
matched.
bad contract is a bad contract. I'll admit it's overly generous. Doesn't mean we have to keep making that same mistake over and over and over again.
This is a contract end.
Renews automatically. Nope, I haven't seen Chief Martin's contract.
So my question would be, if the concern is that people have these huge banks of built up vacation time, wasn't that an issue while you were the city administrator?
No.
No, they were all clear. They were all down low, and they
As far as I know, yes.
in 3 years have accrued 500 hours.
easily. You could do that.
Yeah, I think some of these have been accruing for years, but they weren't cashed out. Now we only cashed out when somebody leaves.
No, you can cash them out annually.
Right, but all of
The
them,
handbook says you should, any amount over a certain amount, you annually, you will receive a payout, a cash out.
No, it doesn't. It says you can cash out some leave, you only carry your X number of days. And you should take leave, and you have to take leave before you can actually do a cash out to show that you've been doing that. And it limits, without the CA approval, the amounts you can sell back. And every collective bargaining agreement is different. And the handbook is different, so. Please.
I have Kevin Martin's employment agreement, and granted, I think it's without going all the way back, it's like dated 2013 or
Yeah,
something.
makes sense.
It says that he will be provided vacation, sick leave, and other forms of leave in accordance with the personnel manual and as now drafted, or as it may be amended from time to time. Blah, blah, blah. However, the following exceptions to the policy will apply. An employee will accrue vacation leave at a rate of 15.34 hours per month, which is consistent with the personnel manual's policy on employees' length of service 15 years and over. The vacation accrues would then go up to 1 hour per month for every year of service. With sick accrue $10 per month or 10 hours per month. Doesn't say anything about tax.
You mean as far as carryover?
Yeah.
Yeah, but where it isn't addressed, the employee handbook takes precedence, and the employee handbook says 40 hours, 40.
Yeah, one of the initial reasons I even brought all this up is I had heard that Edward, or he goes by Jim, you can call him, was receiving a bunch of overtime that he wasn't working. So that was what originally brought this up. And so that was part of the records request.
and I can address that. So he has earned a lot of overtime, because again, when you're down 1 in 4 employees, somebody has to take those shifts. And by union contract, you probably had to offer those shifts to the employees first. He only fills in if no one else will take it. But there was an error. So some of that is going to come back to us. So here's what happened. Our finance director inserted him as an 8-hour-a-day employee, not a 24-hour shift person.
Everything over 8.
Correct. So there is a large amount, and I think we've come up with an exact one.
Second, just,
I'm gonna go roughly.
it's only paid approximately 5,000.
Okay, so he's been overpaid approximately $5,000. Jim's a nice guy, and he has agreed to have that money deducted from what he is owed now that he's quitting. He's quitting at the end of the month. So he said, okay, that's fair. I realized I was overpaid. So we're going to deduct from his vacation time that he hasn't been using, because it's had no chance to take a vacation. It's had shifts. So that would be remedied. That is an error that Chief Holland had pointed out to our finance director multiple times, going back months and months and months. Before it was fixed, it was not fixed.
So the erroneous vacation accruals, how are we going to remedy the overpayments and the underpayments if there are any? The buybacks, the vacation buybacks.
By not letting him cash out.
Not him, just it's multiple people on staff that have.
No, it only happened in Jim Cole.
No, not the overtime. This is vacation buyback. They accrued more than they should have. Were carrying more vacation they should have, and they sold back tremendous amounts of vacation in excess of what they could ever possibly carry across the year.
Yeah.
I can't find
But they
anything in
earned
the
it.
employee handbooks on it.
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
They earned those vacation days.
but they're only allowed to carry X number of days or hours across the year.
Okay, right,
Can
so
you
what
find
you're
it?
saying is.
Yes,
that-
I can find
is
it.
that we can tell the employee, you can earn this vacation time, but you can't take it. That's not fair.
It's. The book is the book. You have to follow the rules.
But there's an exception, if okay by the city.
It's use or lose.
Well, I'd rather people not use it because if they're on vacation, then we're gonna pay
It's
somebody.
their right to use it if they need to use it with their department heads and your permission. What I'm saying is there's a reason the cap is theirs. So the city doesn't incur this enormous liability of people stockpiling the vacation, not using it. And carrying too much and then selling it back at a huge expense. In one case, the most egregious one, it was sold back for $26,000.
Was that mine?
Yes,
Yeah, that was mine.
of which I didn't approve the waiver, but that's beside. Not
Well,
really.
okay. Yeah, so what I did, I didn't take a single vacation when I was a police officer, I didn't take a single sick day, 0 sick days for 6 years. So that's all.
here?
I earned that vacation time, but you can, I didn't
Yeah,
take,
got it. It's-
like that shit out.
Was that, before you became CA?
No, but, I mean, I earned it when I was
Yeah,
in CA, and it carried over, and that was approved in my contract, the council approved. And I
right,
got to carry it over,
right.
and then I.
And my point is that, yeah, your contract was very clear. You got to carry whatever leave you had. But that accrual that you had as a police officer was well in excess of what you should have been able to carry across the fiscal year.
So, can you find it in the handbook?
Say 32.
It's on page 31 of the handbook.
Mine stops at 26.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
26.
Mine stops at 26.
It's online, it would be on your, the full handbook. What is a non-represented employee? Is that a union?
That's a non-union person,
Um,
same as a exempt.
right. And it should be pointed out that the union contracts supersede.
They do, and they have their own language in there about accrual, not about carryover.
You found it, Counselor Brewer?
Yeah, it's on page 31.
Did you read it?
Yes. Non-represented employees may request a vacation buyout for up to 40 hours per year. A request for up to 40 hours may be submitted on the monthly time card. Vacation buyout shall be listed in the reason section and will not count towards hours worked. The employee must take at least 1 week vacation in the 6 months prior to making a request. An employee's vacation balance must be sufficient enough to cover the requested buyout. Request for buyout shall be signed off by the finance director prior to payout. Any hours over 40 must be approved by the city administrator for his or her hires and the mayor for the city administrator.
So those are the ones that are non-exempt, that are exempt.
That are not represented.
Right.
as non-represented.
Each contract, which
Union?
I have here, an example, here's what the police collective bargaining agreement says. No employee may carry more than twice the annual rate, which is 23 days for the most senior employees. Those are my words. Upon approval by the city administrator, employee may be allowed to carry over an additional year of vacation. Employees may request a vacation buyout each fiscal year. A request for up to the employee's normal work week hours may be submitted. Vacation buyout shall be listed in the reason section on the timesheet and will not count towards the hours worked. Employees must take at least 1 week vacation in the 6 months prior to making a request. An employee's vacation balance must be sufficient to cover the requested buyout. A request for an additional vacation buyout or for buyouts of more than employees' normal workweek hours must be pre-approved by the city administrator. And all the CBAs are similar with different numbers like that.
I have one more part on page 32. It talks about regular full-time employee shall accrue sick leave at a rate of 8 hours per calendar year. An employee may not accumulate more than 720 hours of accrued sick leave. Employees who are granted a leave of absence, apply sick leave, shall not accrue during leave of absence. But it just says nothing over 720 hours of accrued.
And we didn't see any abnormalities in the sick leave accrual or sick leave issues.
But I think there is something in our policies where it says you can only use 40 hours of sick leave.
Yes, yeah, there's a cap.
Right, and that, the attorneys I talked to said that you can't do that. For instance, the fire department employees, they work 24-hour shifts, so that would mean they couldn't take 2 sick days. That would be 48 hours. The reason I talked to said you can't get a benefit and tell people they can't use it. So that's one direction that I think we need to make. On sick leave, it also would prevent, it'd be nice to do it, it would prevent Family Medical Leave Act, which is federal law. 12 weeks. I think for being able to use your sick time, and that FMLA says the doctor signs off on it, says you're sick for 12 weeks. You're sick for up to 12 weeks. You can use your sick time. So, it's something that and that's from the CIS.
So for me, the question in this area is, how do we correct those overpayments and maybe there's some underpayments of vacation accrual and buyback? And it, obviously you can't answer it now, but we just need to work on that. Any other questions on this one, this particular issue? Okay. The only other thing that popped out at me was, as part of this records request, we obviously got a future contract, one that's effective July 1st. And yes, it's within the CA's purview to negotiate hire and fire employees. But we also, as city council, have to ensure that it's in the best interest of the city for negotiations as they end up. And the contract I saw was the most generous I've ever seen, perhaps since Susie LeDuc's contract, which was crazy. And so I just, again, CA's purview on negotiating those contracts, but it's our oversight of his actions that we need to take a round turn on, because I don't believe the city can afford those kinds of contracts. I know it might be competitive in Eugene and everywhere else. This is Oak Ridge, and we don't have the money. The fire department budget has gone up by 30% in the past 3 years. The police budget has increased, not quite that much. And so it's just personnel costs are becoming incredibly expensive. I just don't see us being able to afford what we're doing with the hiring at the highest step level of a position, off the pay chart, off the pay scale that we adopted as a city council, off to the right, beyond the maximum pay. Yes, we did. Part of the operations manual is a pay scale in the back that has 5 years worth of pay scale that we give the city administrator to frame his activity. Please.
Right. And Chief Hollett's situation, I don't think he falls in line on that pay scale based on like just years. I mean,
He gets longevity pay increases.
yes,
This is an entirely new position he has never done before. Like when I came in, or when James came in, I think James came in his contract, he came in at like a step 2 or a step 3 as the city administrator. He didn't start, even though he'd been here for 20 years, he didn't start step 14.
But-
I came in as a 3 or a 4. I don't know what it was.
but he's been in the fire department, doing fire department things in an acting chief capacity. for
He wasn't the
years.
acting chief. He
Well,
was
he's been assisting not only city administrators who were acting chiefs, but actual pro tem chiefs. He's been part of that the entire time.
so he earned that 14 step. Is that
I
what you're
feel
thinking?
like his
Well, that was my decision.
experience.
It is. I'm just telling you, I just don't think the city can afford those kinds of decisions.
I also think that this last year's budget with personnel was kind of something that you can't compare as a normal situation based on the issues we were having with the internal investigation that we can now, apparently the fire department can talk about now. Is that correct?
We can only say.
Okay, it's just hush. Okay, so anyways, all these things that have come about, I think they're this coming year, they will be different. Now, unfortunately, with Mr. Cole leaving us, that really does make it rough, which is gonna bring up more issues with personnel. But again, the 35 years on the force is nothing to shake a stick at. And I think that coming in as chief where he's not just coming in blind. No offense, James, you came in blind. You were a police officer and a lawyer, and you came into being the manager of an entire city. I understand that. And same thing, you have a military background, you have business background, you came in as city administrator, you met the qualifications, but you didn't have the experience necessarily to back it up. Chief Hollett, in my opinion, has that experience. He's been part of the fire department for a really long time. I guess I understand where we are with this budget and I get where you're coming from. That's a big number, but that is not a big number for a chief of the fire department, no matter what size it is. I mean, an unincorporated city would probably pay less. But I just believe that this is the day and age we live in where, this amount of money is pretty standard, and hopefully the overtime will be a lot less this coming fiscal year. So.
Again, I've done some research. I have not found a police chief or fire chief earning under $100,000. There might be someone somewhere that I haven't seen yet for maybe a town population 100,000, but Covert, for instance, I think there's still under 2,000 residents there, so smaller than us. Their police chief makes $40,000 more than our police chief. For a smaller city, and I used to work there, nothing happens in Covert. You gotta go on the highway, there's stuff. Well, in recent history, there's a couple of shootings, but those are anomalous. Point is, and I love that chief, he's a great chief in Covert, so I'm just saying, smaller town, $40,000 more. It's tough, because we could all be making a lot more money if we weren't living in Oak Ridge, but it's a trade-off we make. It's beautiful here, it's magical here, I love it here. Here's Scott, and Evan, Rick, and Robert would all say the same thing. We're willing to take less money, far less money. To live in paradise.
Yeah, and James, again, it is your decision. You are the CA. However, I would, particularly since we have really no idea where we are, we haven't had an accurate finance report. Right, since when? We don't have an audit. So how do we even know where we really are to be able to say that we can afford what we're spending? But please.
I'd also like to bring up the fact that our public works lead supervisor makes like a little more than $10,000 less than the man who rushes into burning buildings. I'm just saying, like, we have a huge gap here. We have the public works supervisor making $83,000. And then we're complaining about the fire chief making, a little $15,000 more than that a year.
That's a personal observation.
I understand that, but I feel like it's relevant considering the fact that we're hemming and hawing about the salary of the fire chief who literally saves lives every single day. And we're complaining about it when we have a public works supervisor who's making barely less. I mean,
I'm
overall.
not comparing employees. All I'm saying is we're writing contracts we can't afford.
Well, I
It
think
sounds
that
like
that
it's-
one should be one of them that we're discussing as well. We're just focusing on Chief.
It wasn't in the public records request. Had it been in the public records request, we'd be discussing it. And I'll totally agree with you. He probably has got a very similar contract to Chief Holland. It's probably almost carbon copy. With the exceptions of the pay. So,
No, they're all a little different. And believe me, they all wanted more. As much as I could, you know, but. Yeah, I could be. Desperate, but I can tell you, they all wanted more, everybody wants more. I wanted more when when you guys hired me. It's a balancing act, and my point is, what's the cost of not having a fire chief?
all right, any other comments on this? Any ways ahead, James? What do you think?
Point taken on the following policy, you know, there are some things I'd like to tweak, you know, this provision in here, this is the guideline shall be followed, unless specifically waived by the administrator due to unusual circumstances. That's it's pretty vague, I'd like to maybe come back to council at some point and try to. I mean, what are those unusual circumstances, because otherwise I could just say. Always unusual circumstances, just.
Every day it's unusual. That's, you know.
That's true, everything is unusual in Wisconsin. I don't know, there's always room for improvement.
Councilor Coker, do you have something else?
I just have a question for Scott, if that's okay. How long have we known that Mr. Cole was gonna leave? Was it a spur of the moment thing or?
Yeah, it was pretty sudden. He did give us a 30-day notice. So.
Okay, I was just kind of curious. That was something else that I hadn't heard about, so. Thank you.
Yeah, and in general, I think you get great employees when you offer competitive hire, gives you more choices. And it doesn't seem like the city really is interested in doing that. To me, it's better to have more choices and the incumbent, or not the incumbent, but the internal person can also always hire, always apply. But I don't know why we're so focused on promoting internally when then you might get equally or better qualified person that might come in for a cheaper rate. But we seem to not try to do that. Anything else online or in James, anything more? Or there's no other public comment, we only have one, so. Councilor Kenyon?
Yeah, I thought I understood you to say that the document that was originally requested brought up a litany of other concerns of yours, and I've heard a witch hunt against Scott Howlett and a thing on vacation buyouts, so.
It
where was
wasn't
the
against
rest of
Scott Hallett. It was against the way the hirings are happening, whether it be Scott Hallett, Robert Chrisman. I don't know how Chief Martin was hired because I wasn't around at that time. So, but it wasn't focused on Chief Hallett. Like I said, he's a very good fire chief. I'm concerned with the way this city is hiring employees. Internal, even internal. We should have made that available to all qualified people in the fire department. And we didn't.
Mhm.
It was just suddenly we have a de facto fire chief because no CA is willing to say that they're the ones that made the decision. And so by default, doesn't that seem a little strange to you?
Actually doesn't.
Well, I'm not surprised.
I'm a resident of Oak Ridge and I've been aware since the day I moved here that Scott Howlett is a major part of the police department. He's been around for 35 or fire. Why wouldn't he be the chief?
All I'm saying is the handbook says you're supposed to offer the opportunity to all qualified individuals.
Okay, so
Otherwise,
how
it
do you
starts to look like
propose,
nepotism.
how do you propose that we make sure that it doesn't happen again?
I say that we don't hire emotionally. We put out, if you decide, number one, decide whether you're gonna hire externally and internally or just internally. If you're gonna hire internally, then you need to put out a posting available to all employees that might possibly be qualified, probably just all employees, saying this position is becoming available. Here's the application. Here's the process we're going to go through to get to a hire. None of that was ever done in either of these positions. And so ostensibly, you might be able to say that there was no public works person that was qualified, but I'm not even going to say that. I have no idea. That's a decision for the hiring committee. So instead, we just sort of pick these names, people out of the hat, qualified people, but we throw them in the position and all of a sudden there's a facto, they're there. So we need to follow the employee handbook on how to do it.
But how do we make sure we, the council.
Right.
Are the manager of the city administrator? How do we make sure that from the day they start,
Mhm.
that they're capable of following every single rule that they haven't even read yet?
Because when you come to a position or a situation like we're getting ready to bring on a fire chief. If I had been on council that time, I probably would have asked James, did you read through the employee handbook and figure out how to actually do this hiring? Why aren't we going external? Why are we doing this internal thing? I would have asked those questions. It's our job as council,
It wasn't brought to us though, as a,
but you had to be aware that there was no fire chief and somebody's a fire chief. That wasn't aware to anybody. I mean, and so I would have asked the question, how was this fire chief? How did he get to where he was? What hiring process took place? Because you would have heard about it. I mean, in my hiring, it was actually citizens involved in the hiring. I had to go through a round table and I had an open house where everyone came to bring waters. It didn't happen with James.
yes, it did.
There was no open house.
It was online.
Online. pandemic.
On Zoom, there was people, there was other,
Okay.
was it public?
No, it was not public.
It was not
There was a
public,
process and then.
but there was the other applicants and stuff were on Zoom when James was
Yeah.
hired.
Citizens and interviewing.
I'm not saying it wasn't competed. I know he was competed and there was applications, but I'm telling you, these other hires, which is why it bothered me, there was no process. There was no process at all, and the process is right there in the.
Well, but there is this caveat in here about these guidelines shall be followed unless specifically waived by the administrator due to unusual circumstances. So maybe we want to consider.
So was it waived by you due to emergency circumstances? Emergency circumstances?
Unusual.
Unusual?
No, because again, I
You thought they were already in place.
right, I thought he was already chief, but.
And again,
But I could have,
I'm not saying you couldn't have cited that, but is that the right way to hire? Don't you get better qualified candidates when you have competition?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And
You might want to get rid of this because
well, you do have emergencies, though. Like
you do.
with Jim,
Right.
you need to get a replacement. Anything else? Councilor Howard?
I just want to say to Counselor Tarman, I think that was really uncalled for that you just yelled out nepotism a few minutes ago. There was no nepotism. I had nothing to do with it. When Chief Martin was pro tem, he didn't include me on anything. So I take that really offensive that you used it.
It's,
I don't need a reply. I just want to make sure. You
oh,
know
I'm
it's
allowed to
very
reply
offensive.
though. So I'm saying that
There
it
was no
doesn't make the
nepotism.
constituents of the city look upon us favorably when things like
That
that.
doesn't mean there was nepotism. I was not involved in
I
it.
said that it appears to be nepotism.
That's not what you said. You said nepotism.
Said it looks.
Okay. We'll leave it there. Anything else? There, Councilor online, is Councilor Bjornson here? Yeah. Councilor Bjornson, anything before we go? No. Not on the schedule. You done, James? We done?
Yes.
Okay,
Did we miss,
all right. Meeting adjourned at 7:15.
so we missed, public comment?
There was not on the agenda for closing public comment, it was only in the beginning.
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay.
I've been up since 2 AM, so I'm going to bed.
There will be opportunity for public comment at the next city council meeting.
I do have a comment that I would like to make if allowed.
So tired. At least tomorrow, I'll sleep till 5 AM instead of 2.
I don't know.
I was so much going on. I didn't know what was going on. I know I'm not here in my mind.